I got a bone to pick. I'm gonna tell you a story, Hannah, because
I'm really
I had
excited.
a bad transgender story.
That is the.
I had a bad story with a transgendered person.
You had a bad experience.
Yes.
That has led to a story.
Yes.
I think that's.
Well,
a
I'm
better way
going to
say
tell you
that.
the story.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm really excited.
I went to a Moose Jaw Pride event at Common Cafe. Took my kid. He's 5 years old. He was drinking hot chocolate. I was drinking coffee. It was at Common. I said it's my favorite place in all of Moose Jaw. And as I said, it was a Pride event. Drake Mark was on the stage playing some Father John Misty. It was a good time. And a transgendered person walked in the room. My kid, 5 years old. He was like, "Dad, look, that guy's dressed like a girl." Just like that. So I was I'm really liberal. And I was like, well, Roke, I think he wants to be a girl. So maybe we'll call him a girl. And then Roke looks at me and he says, like this. It was kind of like, Dad, this is a guy dressed like a girl. Like, he's seen that before. Kids dress like girls. Mm-hmm. So I didn't correct him. I just said, oh, whatever. Just leave it like that. And then a woman scowled at me. Like, it was like this. It was like, this was what it was like. Ah! Like that. Ah! Did I do something wrong?
Okay, but now, you painted the picture of what this story was going to be about, and now I think that this story is actually about parenting and not about transgender rights.
I don't want people to think that this is me. My problem isn't with the transgenders or the Moose Jaw Pride. It's with one person.
No, I know. But what I'm saying is that I think that you made a call as a parent because you have a 5-year-old boy who is, processing at his 5-year-old state of cognitive development the reality of that, like, normal understanding being broken, and you made a call to not address it beyond how you very respectfully did. So by not, like, pushing it further in that, like, legitimately weird and public environment, like you're in a coffee shop, he's drinking hot chocolate, are you going to sit down with your 5-year-old and have a discussion about transgender issues and the transgender process? Probs not. I wouldn't if I had a 5-year-old.
Probs not.
I wouldn't be having that conversation
I didn't do it.
on a Wednesday night over hot chocolate. I wouldn't do that. And
it was a Wednesday night too, actually. Yeah, it's neat you knew that.
I know things. So no, I don't think you did anything wrong.
Okay, I brought this story to. I'm in a Facebook group where it's a lot of liberal atheists, of which I am one, and we talk about these issues. And I told that story similar to how I told you I baited them a little bit.
Yeah.
I did bait a little bit, but I told exactly that story. And the question at the end was, did I do something wrong? Mm-hmm. Was I in some way offensive? Because I am 100% certain I'm not offending anyone. And I was called rude, ignorant, transphobic. I was called a bigot, a teabagger. Like, as in, I was called a teabagger.
I didn't know that Canadians used that term.
Well, there's a lot of Americans on this page.
Okay.
Like, oh, that's
it's like an open group. Like, you don't know these people.
That's how these teabaggers would react. And it was implied that I was a bad parent, and I should have had a heart-to-heart conversation with my son about whether or not sex is a social construct.
Okay. I would like to talk about this from a psychological standpoint. And I'm not even I'm sorry that I'm not probably addressing this the way that you wanted me to, but
I wanted you to be on their side and attack me.
I'm just not. Roke is 5.
Yes.
Do you understand the cognitive development at the age of 5? Like, concrete concepts, boy, girl. Those are fully understood. Interests within that are fluid. That's fine. Like, if Roke wanted to play with something that was seen as feminine, he probably wouldn't think that was weird. If a girl that he knew wanted to play with something that was seen as masculine, that probably wouldn't be seen as weird by him as a 5-year-old.
Right. Unless
it was imposed upon him that's wrong and inappropriate. But for you to then be expected to be like, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
for you to say, even at the age of 5, like, are you giving the sex talk? Are you explaining to him the biological realities of human beings? Because if not, then I don't think you can be expected to talk about how in the most abstract form, sometimes people's bodies don't fit with their brains. What is a 5-year-old supposed to make of that?
Yeah, all he knows that he has a peener and girls have kukas.
He called them kukas?
Yeah.
Did you call them kukas?
I've never used the word kuka until now.
Where did he get that word?
He calls them peeners and kukas, or sometimes he calls it a hot dog. He's like, I have a hot dog.
That's the best. Yeah. I just think it's not fair to blame you as a parent for regarding your son's cognitive development appropriately.
Right.
And I think there is something to be said for cognitive safety, because if you had that conversation with him, I guarantee you he wouldn't be approaching it on the level that this person is probably expecting him to. But then he's going to take it into his social groups, and all of a sudden this misunderstanding is bred throughout his social group. That's toxic. That doesn't create a cognitively safe environment.
I want to take this a little bit further now.
Okay.
Let's just say there was no child, and let's say it was just me, and for instance, how do I word this? I'm getting lost here. Okay, I don't think that even if it is an adult, if I'm sitting across from Chris, and he says the same thing, we have the same conversation, I still don't think either of us have done anything wrong.
Okay.
Right? As if we don't, this is where I find that liberal intolerance, and I for the longest time I didn't believe it was a thing, but I do now. I think it's liberal intolerance is a problem, where now we're putting a different standard on, like, so I am not in any way afraid or do I fear insulting or offending somebody that is straight.
No.
Now, one of the things they attacked me with was that I just said the transgendered.
Yeah.
That is that offensive? To just call a transgendered person, oh, the transgendered or the trans, is that offensive?
Are you referring to them as a group?
I'm referring to the one person that was in the cafe.
Okay, yeah, because then you're objectifying by saying the.
I disagree. That is not offensive.
I don't think that it's necessarily effective. I just think that you're terming it.
I think it's grammatically
poorly.
It's grammatically incorrect.
For sure.
Right.
But I think that in that grammatic incorrectness, you are specifying in an objective
I'm not
manner.
specifying anything. I'm just saying the trans.
Can you hand me the remote?
Yeah, I can hand you the remote.
Can you go talk to the trans for me?
Yeah, so what? I get it. It sounds different. Like if you say, can you go talk to the straight? Yes, it's grammatically incorrect, but it's not insulting. It's not offensive. If it's not offensive to say that about the straights, I treat everyone equally. Then therefore, it is not offensive to say that about a transgender person.
But you do need to understand the history with which these people are approaching that kind of grammatical incorrectness. They're on the defensive.
But then that is
for a fair reason.
Sure.
They're on the defensive because they've been treated so poorly in the past.
That's not them on the defensive now. If they're attacking people for using those words, they're now on the offensive.
Aren't we on the offensive when we're on the defensive?
I think we should all be on the level. And if it's not offensive to say it to a straight person, it's, as I said, I treat everyone equally. If I can say the straight, it is grammatically correct or incorrect, but it's not offensive to a straight person, then I can also say the trans and mean it just the same way. I
just don't understand. You would never say the straight. You would never say that.
Sure, you're right, but that doesn't mean it's offensive. That just means I said something that sounds silly.
If you wouldn't say it about one person, why would you say it about another?
I'm not saying it about this. I'm not saying it about straight people because I'm offending them. It's grammatically incorrect. That's all it is.
But I don't understand. Would you say like the fat, the bald? The one distinguishing factor about them is what makes calling them the blank okay. Yeah. Like that's not something that people do, and that I think is dehumanizing.
But that's youth. It's not dehumanizing. It's not dehumanizing.
You're not intending dehumanization.
And if I don't intend to dehumanize, then it's not dehumanizing.
Yeah.
That is the nature.
It's true. That is a true
That's
statement.
The nature of offense. If
that
you
is
don't
a true
intend
statement,
it, it's not
but
offensive.
I think that it's fair. I think that it's fair for it to be interpreted that way
But
because
because
it's a subjective statement.
That's where, that's them interpreting something that's not offensive of something offensive. I get it. There's a problem there. Somebody's been offended, but it's not that I've said something offensive. It's that somebody's has interpreted something and somebody's been offended by what I said. So the onus would then be on them.
Okay, but your aim was not to offend, and yet you did. So how could you have not offended?
That's not my problem. It's not the problem. How could I not? It's how they could have not been offended by it.
I think that's an unfortunate viewpoint because if you my intent was not to hurt you by stealing your car, and yet you are hurt by it.
You're comparing this to stealing a car, though.
Okay, but my intent was not to. An intent to harm doesn't always equal no harm, is what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying, but it's not connecting.
And
with
I think that's a very. I think what I'm saying is you're being very self-oriented in that.
I think I'm treating everyone equally.
No, I think that you're focusing on what you have done, and you don't want to change yourself to help the greater group.
Here's the thing: if we'll talk about Caitlyn Jenner, for instance.
Okay.
I am more than happy to call Caitlyn Jenner, and refer to her as a woman because that doesn't affect me any. It makes no difference to me. If that's what you want to be called, I'm more than happy to call you that.
But why does it affect you?
It doesn't. I just said it doesn't. In no way.
I had only said like a third of a sentence. Why does it then affect you to alter your speech a little bit to stop objectifying trans by saying the trans when you're referring to an individual?
Because first of all,
an individual human.
First of all, it was a mistake.
Yeah,
but it's nothing that's offensive. It's just a grammatical mistake.
That's the other thing is that I think that this wasn't, because it wasn't intentional, it can be chalked up to a mistake, which does require grace on both parts. So the person that overheard you saying this could have probably kept it to herself, being like, oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah. I probably wouldn't have reacted the same way, but I probably would have thought to myself, if it had been an adult with you.
Yeah.
Okay, not your child. I probably would have thought that's unfortunate. Maybe. I don't even know how I would have reacted because it wasn't me in the situation. But I just think that personal change that benefits others is something that all around we should be aiming for. Whether or not you deem it necessary.
But now you're putting the standard on the wrong person. Okay?
I don't think I am. I think I'm putting the standard on everyone as a whole.
On everyone. But now, okay, you're saying that, like, for instance, Caitlyn Jenner is a man. That has had, like... Biologically, she's a man. But now you're saying that she's a woman because do you believe that sex is a social construct?
I think that gender is a social construct.
Sorry, gender is a social construct. So she's a woman because she, in her mind, she identifies as a woman. She's a woman, right? Yeah. That is not the definition of what a man or male or female is. That's not
a definition of what a sexual male or female is. That's not what
the definition of male has the genitalia and the
definition
organs.
Of this. The definition of a biological male.
Right. If we look up male and female in any dictionary, it says male is the organs in the penis, female is the organs in the...
sex. That's the sex.
So he's still a male.
He's still a sexual male.
Sure.
He's not a gendered male.
So, okay, to call him, if I say... or if like my son, when he saw that transgendered person, he said, when my son saw the trans, he said, I did that to insult. Okay, when my son saw the transgendered person, his thing was, oh, that's a man dressed as a woman. Mm-hmm. Technically, by every definition of the word man and woman we have, that is just a man dressed as a woman. Mm-hmm. So, in order to make it so it's not, we would actually have to change the definition of the word male.
But let's go back to the intent. The intent was not to be a man dressed as a woman.
Right.
It was to be an self-identified woman dressed as in the preferred way.
Yeah.
That was the intent, and I think that was what was acknowledged by you initially.
Yes. And like I made it very clear, but that still, by all the definition of male and female have, we can agree that that's still a male dressed as a female. It might not, the gender, we're talking about the sex.
At its very base form.
Yes.
Sure.
So in order to ask somebody to, let's say, okay, no, it's a woman now, you have to call that person by a woman, you're asking them a favor. You're asking them to go against a cultural norm and an accepted reality. So that's you asking them the favor. So now, if that person doesn't want to, that person, in my opinion, is not the bad guy. He's not a bad... It's not what I would do, but that person is no worse off, in my opinion, than anyone else, just because he... Some people like to have... They don't want to lie to people, and in their opinion, that's them lying to people. People like to have their T's crossed and their I's dotted. He wants that to be a girl. Not what I would do, again. But I don't think somebody is a bad person for having that opinion. I think you would be a bad person for attacking that person for not conforming to your interpretation, not necessarily yours, the social interpretation of sex.
But you know what we as society generally call people who are unwilling to do favors that don't really require anything of them for other people?
What?
Selfish.
That's intolerance.
I don't think it is.
I think that's intolerance. You're not tolerating a completely accepted reality. That's where the liberal intolerance comes in.
I think that your standard of reality is very false because reality is constantly
This isn't my
changing.
standard of reality.
And I think that your understanding that this standard of reality is society's standard of reality is also false because society's standard of reality is constantly changing. Do we need to go back to the civil rights movement? Do we need to approach the issue of racism from a that the people who
but this isn't these people
are using blacks that are using our bathrooms are getting our bathrooms dirty and we are going to catch disease from them.
They're not discriminating though. Nobody's discriminating by not calling that person by the sex he is not.
I don't think
born
that
as he's not discriminating.
I don't think that you as a cisgendered male
that offends me.
I don't think that you get to decide what is discrimination. I don't think that you get to choose that because you're not being de-elevated. You're not being discriminated against by saying that you're not. It's like being culturally sensitive because you're coming into that culture. You don't get to decide what is culturally sensitive. You don't understand that culture. You're not a part of that culture.
And I'm not claiming that I do.
You are entering into it, but you're still deciding.
No, but I'm still treating everybody. I'm not giving anyone special privileges.
You're bringing your perspective and your understanding into a world that you don't understand and you aren't previously a part of. And so you're coming in and saying...
No, you're coming in and saying we all have to adapt to something that people don't know how to adapt to yet. If we don't, we're wrong.
If you went to a Middle Eastern culture and
yes.
you tried to engage on the same cultural level, but brought your Western bias, and they said that's not really culturally sensitive, culturally appropriate, and you said that's discriminatory.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
You are saying that. You're saying that now.
I'm not. I'm saying the opposite of that. You're saying that now.
No, I'm not. I think that you're being unwilling to acknowledge.
No, I'm treating everybody equally.
Culture within our society
more than acknowledging
that requires respect and that requires acknowledgement and requires change from you. And you're not willing. You're not willing to make that change.
I'm treating everyone equally.
You think you're treating everyone equally.
If I call a straight person, if I can call a straight, and him not be offended, I can also call a lesbian, and have her not be offended. And if they are offended, that is on them. They're offended at what I said. I have not offended them.
You are not acknowledging the history and the background from which these people come, and that is.
And that's tragic, but that's not treating it. If I'm equalizing treatment of one gender.
By not acknowledging the history, you're not acknowledging the present.
That doesn't even make sense.
You have to understand. Okay, you have for someone. Let's just go to a difference. For someone with PTSD, yes. If you are looking at them and saying they're acting strangely without acknowledging the events that have led to their PTSD. that's just blind. That's just not acknowledging the factors that had led up to their present, led
But
up
hold
to
on.
their experience.
If they are still acting strangely, they're still acting strangely by the definition of the word strange.
But if you understood why they were acting strangely,
it doesn't mean they're not acting strange.
okay, but like you would make amends, you would make room for that strangeness because of their experience.
And I am with transgenders. I'm not treating them any different. I'm just not changing the definition of words.
And I think that that's narrow.
No, that's just not. That's using. If we're using the word strange, strange has a certain meaning. If we want to change the definition,
No, it doesn't. It
strange
doesn't.
in the dictionary, in every known dictionary we have,
And what
has
is it?
Unnatural, uncommon.
No, it's out of the norm.
Sure, and that
But
is
the
out of the norm.
norm-
That person is acting out of the
The
norm.
norm bends, flows, ebbs to
And it has not bent
what-
to flow to make that normal, to make
But-
that anything other than out of the
But
norm.
we have the power to change that.
Right, but it's
you
not
make
there.
something normal. But why don't you want to make it there?
I'm not saying I don't, but I don't want to treat people differently.
You don't want to. You don't want to change the definition. You don't want to help that.
I never said I didn't want to change the definition.
Yes, you
I
did.
just said that is not. I told you myself that when I see transgender people, I call them by what they want because I want this
and
progression.
high
But
five.
you're
You are
not
doing
wrong
such a good
if you
job.
don't.
Of course you are.
Okay,
It's
let's-
just a human decency
let's
to
try
do
something.
that. But you have to be willing to change the definition. You have to be willing to move with
Then we need to
culture.
change the actual definition of the word.
Okay, well, do you want to take that to Webster?
Let's do something here.
'Kay.
Okay, I'm going to try something with you. I'm going to say a statement. I want your reaction. Transgender people are weird
Why do you think that?
because they're by the very definition of the word weird, they are uncommon, unnatural, not out of the ordinary. It's just not. It's weird. And secondly, why is weird offensive? The daycare teachers call the kids weird. It's not even an offensive word. So to say transgendered people are weird, first of all, it's accurate by the definition of weird. Second of all, it's not even offensive. So why are people getting offended? And I don't even find it's the transgender people getting offended by it. I find it's the people who are in the community that aren't.
Okay, and that's fair. To be on the defense, to be on a hyper defensive tract on behalf of others can be damaging. That's very true and very understandable.
So you acknowledge a little bit of liberal intolerance.
But
What are you
for
looking
the
We got
people,
2 more minutes. We got to wrap this up at 25.
for people who are on the outside of the culture to be
Okay,
defensive on behalf of the culture that they're not a part of, and not acknowledging that they're not a part of that can be very harmful.
Let's talk about outside the culture. As I said, I'm a pretty liberal guy. At work, I am the guy in the lunchroom, the only guy in the lunchroom that will admit that Brokeback Mountain was a good movie.
Great movie.
A great movie. Great movie. No one out there, I wouldn't watch that movie. That's the typical reaction of men, right?
Sure.
So if I'm going into these atmospheres, like I was at a Pride event, the guys I work with, they would not go to that Pride event. Not that, and it's
I
not.
don't understand why you're.
It's not that they're against gays. It's just that they feel uncomfortable. And these people are all people that would vote in favor of gay rights and gay marriage. But these people, they go to events like this and they then become objectified. So like when I go to an event like this, I'm getting scowled at, right? I think we need to make allowances. If we want these people, hold on a sec. If we want these people, and by these people I mean like more conservative-minded people that do support gay rights to come and be a part of that gay rights movement, it's not going to happen if people like me are getting scowled at it. And I'm a pretty liberal guy, so if my more like Digger, who's on the show, he's like a notch behind me in liberalism, right? But he's very liberal, but he would never go to one of these events because he feels that they're judgmental of him for not completely understanding what exact words you can or can't say.
And I think that interpretation of judgment, that perception of judgment, is unfortunate because the gay community is constantly for education. They're constantly for providing information as to what things are, what things mean, what is the definition. Furthermore, speaking of definitions, the dictionary definition of weird is of relating to or caused by witchcraft or the supernatural. Second definition, strange or extraordinary character.
Odd, strange.
No.
That's weird.
Strange or
that's weird by the
extraordinary
definition.
character.
Well, they're strange.
You
Anyways,
didn't say strange. Yes,
I said strange first, but anyways, Hannah, thank you for coming on the show. Tell us what you think below. If you think I'm an idiot, I want to know. If you have any insight you can offer.
Any educational websites you can link them to?
Or her too. Thank you. Thanks, Emily. Thank you.